April 18th, 1906, 5:12 in the morning. The roar of 10,000 lions rose from beneath the earth. And then San Francisco began to shake apart. In under 60 seconds, one of the most powerful cities on the American West Coast was broken beyond recognition. This is not just a story of destruction. This is the story of how a city of 400,000 people looked into the ruins of everything they had built and chose to start again. So, to understand what was lost that morning, you first have to understand what San Francisco was. In 1906, it was not just a city. It was the gateway to the Pacific. For 60 years, since the gold rush of 1848, San Francisco had been the financial, cultural, and commercial capital of the entire American West. Its port was the busiest on the West Coast. Ships from Asia, South America, and Europe docked in its harbor carrying trade from every corner of the world. Nob Hill gleamed with the mansions of railroad barons. Chinatown was the largest Chinese community outside of Asia. The Palace Hotel, the grandest hotel west of the Mississippi, stood at the corner of Market Street. Nearly 400,000 people called it home. And on the night of April 17th, 1906, the night before everything changed, not one of them knew what was coming. At 5:15 in the morning on April 18th, the San Andreas Fault slipped. A rupture nearly 270 miles long tore through the earth from Northern California, all the way south toward Los Angeles. The shaking reached a magnitude now estimated between 7.9 and 8.0. The cable cars stopped dead in their tracks. City Hall, barely a year old, crumbled to its iron skeleton.
The Palace Hotel's vast glass ceiling shattered and rained down on the courtyard below.
Buildings collapsed into the streets. Streets split open and swallowed whatever stood above them. The shaking lasted less than 60 seconds. But in those 60 seconds, over 28,000 buildings were damaged or destroyed. The ground itself had shifted. And then, almost immediately, something worse began. In the moments after the earthquake, dozens of fires ignited across the city simultaneously. Gas mains had ruptured. Wood-framed buildings, the majority of San Francisco's construction, were dry, dense, and packed tightly together. But the earthquake had done something more devastating than simply start fires. It had destroyed the water mains beneath the streets. Every pipe that carried water to the fire hydrants of San Francisco was broken. When firefighters arrived at their hydrants and turned the valves, nothing came out. Fire Chief Dennis Sullivan, the one man who might have organized a strategy, a coordinated plan, had been mortally wounded when the California Theater's dome crashed through his fire station in the first seconds of the earthquake. With no water, no chief, and no coordinated plan, the fires merged and spread. For 4 full days, San Francisco burned. Firefighters resorted to dynamiting entire city blocks, deliberately destroying buildings in the fire's path, trying to create gaps it could not cross. It was not enough. By the time rain finally helped extinguish the last flames on April 21st, the fire had consumed everything. When the smoke cleared, the numbers told a story almost impossible to comprehend. More than 3,000 people were dead, though the true number may never be known. Hundreds of deaths in Chinatown went unrecorded. By officials who ignored the Chinese community entirely, over 80% of the city was destroyed. 28,000 buildings gone. Between 225,000 and 300,000 people were homeless.
out of a total population of 400,000. Property losses exceeded $400 million in 1906 dollars.
The equivalent of more than $10 billion today. Golden Gate Park, the Presidio, the Panhandle, every open space in the city was covered in makeshift tents. People who had gone to bed in their own homes the night before now had nothing except the city around them and the decision of what to do next. Within hours of the earthquake, the United States Army was already moving. Troops from the Presidio fanned out across the city. Martial law was effectively declared. Mayor E. Schmitz issued orders authorizing soldiers to shoot looters on sight. The Army divided San Francisco into 7 relief sections and established 26 refugee camps in parks across the city. Tents went up in Golden Gate Park, Dolores Park, and along the Presidio. There was, however, a darker side to the relief effort. Chinese residents of San Francisco, survivors of a community that had been devastated, were forced into a segregated camp in a remote corner of the Presidio, deliberately placed farther from food supplies and medical care than any other group. Some civic leaders openly used the disaster as an opportunity to try to drive Chinatown out of its location near the central business district. They failed, but the attempt was made. From around the world, aid poured in. $9 million in donations arrived from individuals, governments, and organizations across the United States, Europe, Japan, and China. As the immediate crisis stabilized, the Army turned to a longer-term problem. Hundreds of thousands of people had nowhere to live.
The Army's solution was the earthquake cottage, a small, simple redwood house, about 720 square feet, designed to provide real shelter through the winter.
5,610 of these cottages were built and placed into 11 camps across the city. Rent was $2 a month. And that rent was credited toward the purchase price of $50, so that families could eventually own their own cottage.
At their peak, these camps housed over 16,000 people. The last official refugee camp did not close
Until June 30th, 1908, more than 2 years after the earthquake. Some of those original cottages still exist today in the neighborhoods of San Francisco, incorporated into private homes, standing quietly as the last physical remnants of the city's darkest chapter. Before the fires were even fully out, San Francisco's business leaders had already made their decision. They would rebuild. Immediately. Aggressively. Their reasoning was not only emotional, it was economic and strategic. San Francisco knew that every week it spent in ruins was a week that Los Angeles, Seattle, and Portland were gaining ground as alternatives on the West Coast. Governor George Pardee issued a statement that did not even mention the word earthquake. He spoke only of rebuilding, quickly, confidently, immediately. Some civic leaders argued for a new approach: wider streets, planned boulevards, modern infrastructure. The architect Daniel Burnham had already drawn up a grand redesign plan for San Francisco before the earthquake. But the city's business community would not wait. A compromise was reached. Commercial property owners were allowed to rebuild immediately, even without formal permits, as long as they kept structures simple. Within weeks of the earthquake, the sound of construction was already rising from the ruins. The speed of what followed was extraordinary. By the end of 1906, just 8 months after the earthquake, the first new buildings were already complete in the commercial districts. Brick replaced wood wherever possible. New building codes demanded stronger, more fireproof construction. Steel-framed structures began to rise where Victorian wooden homes had stood. A new emergency firefighting water system was planned. a dedicated 135-mile pipeline network, high-elevation reservoirs, pumping stations, and fireboats.
So that what had happened in April 1906 could never happen the same way again.
By 1987, the refugee camps had emptied, and families were moving back into rebuilt neighborhoods.
By 1909, with reconstruction visible on every block, the city's business leaders launched a bold and audacious bid. San Francisco would host a World's Fair.
Not someday. In 1915, 9 years after standing in ash.
The bid was not just an economic gamble. It was a declaration to the world. We are back. On February 20th, 1915, 9 years, 10 months, and 2 days after the earthquake, the Panama Pacific International Exposition opened. On San Francisco's northern waterfront, the site itself told the full story of the city's recovery.
The land on which the exposition was built had been created using rubble from the 1906 earthquake.
Broken stone and ash from the destroyed city, compacted into the edge of the bay to form new ground. From the rubble of disaster,
they had literally built the foundation of celebration. The exposition was spectacular. The centerpiece, the Tower of Jewels, rose 435 feet and was covered in more than 100,000 cut-glass gems that caught and scattered light across the grounds.
18 million visitors came from around the world. They came to see the Panama Canal celebrated. But they also came to see something that should have been impossible. A city completely rebuilt, glittering and alive, less than a decade after it had been reduced to ash and rubble. The message San Francisco sent to the world was clear. Okay.
But not everyone recovered equally. The Chinese community of San Francisco, which had survived the earthquake, survived the fires, survived the segregated refugee camps,
now faced a new effort to permanently displace them. City officials attempted to relocate Chinatown, far from the central business district, arguing the land was too valuable. The Chinese community and their advocates fought back. The effort to displace them failed. Chinatown was rebuilt. And it was rebuilt in its original location, blocks from Union Square and the heart of the city. It stands there to this day. The recovery of 1906 was remarkable, but it was also a reminder that resilience is not always shared equally, even among those who lost everything together. San Francisco's flag has always featured a phoenix, a bird rising from fire. Long before 1906, the city had chosen that symbol deliberately. It had burned before. It had rebuilt before. But nothing had tested that symbol like the morning of April 18th, 1906. In 60 seconds of shaking and 4 days of fire, more than 80% of a great city was erased. And in the 10 years that followed, street by street, building by building, block by block, the people of San Francisco built it back home. Not just as it was. Better. Stronger walls. Wider streets. A water system that would never fail again.
and a World's Fair to prove it to the planet. The earthquake is remembered as the deadliest
in the history of the United States. But San Francisco is remembered for something else, too. For refusing to stay down. For looking at the ash and the rubble. And choosing, without hesitation,
to build again.